IVM.
Hi, welcome to Know Your Kanoon. This is Amber from Rana Ventures. And in today's episode, we'll be looking at the issues pertaining to the Transgenders Bill, which has been passed recently on the 26th of November 2019. This is also going to be our last episode for the second season. We'll be coming back with a bang for a new season, that is season 3, with new episodes, new format, and many more things to catch up with. Now, coming to the current issue at hand, which is the Transgenders Bill, it has been enunciated as a bill which is equivalent to that of murder of the gender justice for the Indian public in general. For the transgenders in public, it has not upheld the principles of constitution which were enunciated in and upheld by the Supreme Court in the NALSA judgment. In fact, if you look at the constitution of the bill and the language it uses, it is very ambiguous at stages. It is something which has been compiled together without much of interest being given to the sensitivities involved towards the community, which is the LGBTQIA community. All right. So let's look at what does the bill basically cover. So the bill prohibits against discrimination. The first and foremost point, the bill prohibits discrimination against transgender persons in educational institutions, government establishments, or in cases of property where you're renting or purchasing property, or you're getting healthcare and using public services, which is a very nice step. But it does not define or explain in any way what does discrimination in context of transgender community mean. So it is a self-implying bill. There is no expressly written anywhere that what this discrimination would be. It also does not mention the penal provisions pertaining to such discrimination against persons who discriminate transgenders. So again, the story revolves around and reaches the same point that there is no provision against perpetrators and the accused. Also, the individuals who are suffering, they do not have a recourse as it was expected it would come out in the bill. So the first and foremost issue being guidelines not being provided. In terms of guidelines, I think Supreme Court had laid guidelines mentioning that there has to be a special approval committee. There will be a assessment committee as well. I might use the terms differently, but of course there had to be a committee which would judge and determine the recognition of that individual. There was a committee which was to sit and implement these guidelines as we speak about regarding healthcare, public services, property. But none of that seems to have been highlighted in the bill. Recognition of identity. Now, one of the most major cruxes of the LGBTQI community is the recognition of their identity and who they relate to. It has been globally proven, and in the field of psychology and mental health, it has been proven that identity is something which one can ascertain by self-perception. However, the bill does not give that will or right for individuals to determine whether they belong to the LGBTQIA community in one of the facts basis their perception. It states that a transgender person must make an application to the district magistrate to receive an identity certificate. And that certificate will confer rights and it will be a proof of recognition of his identity as a transgender person. Now, this is completely cruel in terms of the language of law, and also unconstitutional, because the whole idea for the community globally around the world is to recognize their allying with one of the LGBTQIA members through their own self-perception and not through a medium where they have to go to a body, and that to a court or a magistrate. Even if that was the case, assertion is something which was not there through formal means. Secondly, it says that in case a person undergoes a sex reassignment surgery, then he or she must apply for another certificate to change their gender identity. And the presiding body on this would be the district magistrate, who will analyze the correctness of the medical certificate issued by the medical superintendent or the chief medical officer according to the bill. Penalties. Now, if you look at the penalties in this, it states that causing harm of any kind, including a physical or sexual abuse to a transgender person, could attract punishment from 6 months and extend up to 2 years. Now, this is a saving grace in the light of what we are reading through. But it is not something very definitive which would deter somebody from assaulting. In case a rape happens, the penalty is very different in case of a man and a woman. And in case of a individual from the LGBTQI community, you can look at the penalty, how strong it is. The bill also states that there has to be a national council for transgender persons, which will advise the government on formulating policies for the community. And it would monitor the implementation and address the grievances. Howsoever, despite mentioning all of this, the bill has nowhere enunciated and mentioned any kind of reservation in education and employment for the transgender community. Right? The legislation also states that the court can decide to place a transgender in a rehab center if the members of the family or the family is unable to take care of that individual. And it also states that the center will provide for healthcare services, including medical services, sex reassignment surgery, and hormonal therapy, which are very good initiatives indeed if you look at being the progressiveness about it. But there is no mention whether these services will be free of cost or will there be any subsidies. So initially, if you look at the bill, there are a lot of gaps, a lot of differences. It's very ambiguous. But it states that another interesting fact, and I like to say, it states that the provision for coverage of medical expenses by a comprehensive insurance scheme for sex reassignment surgery, hormonal therapy, laser therapy, and other health of issues of transgender persons will be provided. Again, the language is strong. It is hinting at something, but what is definitive, it does not mention in the bill initially as of now where it stands. So the major implications, as we covered, you look at, whether it is identity, you look at whether the manner it is to be used, the guidelines, they're all ambiguous. It is something that has been just put together for the sake of it. So the objections as we speak, major ones are, I'll reiterate them again. It does not recognize the right to identity of one's gender. The bill only allows for the certificate to identify a person as transgender. All right. Another interesting part is that people from the LGBTI community are stating that this is against Supreme Court judgment. Self-assessment is one of the things that they can do to recognize the identity. And in that sense, telling a district magistrate, a court, how can they realize or understand what the community goes through? Right. And since it takes months and months to get your documents sorted, I had done a segment on different documents which people from the transgender community can opt for. At the main, they get process to obtain that. It does not provide that comfort to obtaining these with the right methods and channels. So the message that comes to the community is not very clear. Rather, again, as I summarize, it clearly does not circumvent or fulfill what people looking at from the NALSA judgment. And for our listeners who don't know NALSA judgment, it was a landmark judgment in establishing the rights for LGBTQIA in India by recognizing them as a fact in a section of the society and enshrining that, that same-sex relations are okay. And that is one of the very first judgments which really helped people from the community to come out. Now, in light of that, the bill fails on these standards as we discussed. It would be interesting if you guys could write into me and possibly talk about it, where we can have a panel discussion and I can get back to you with solutions and the ways it can be altered and changed. Though nothing is clear in terms of what amendments would come to the bill subsequently, but as of now, the bill is just haphazard. It talks about providing light, but it does not anyway enshrine any of that as per the Constitution.
Thank you for listening to Know Your Kanoon. Catch Know Your Kanoon every week on the IVM website or the app or anywhere you get your podcast from.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.
Did you know that Parsis in Mumbai, instead of being left at the Tower of Silence after they die, are now cremated? And why? Because a cow fell sick in the early 1990s. Did you know that the smog in Delhi is caused by something that farmers in Punjab do and that there's no way to stop them? Did you know that there wasn't one gas tragedy in Bhopal, but three? One of them was seen, but two were unseen. Did you know that many well-intentioned government policies hurt the people they're supposed to help? Why was demonetization a bad idea? How should GST have been implemented? Why are all our politicians so corrupt when not all of them are bad people? I'm Amit Verma, and in my weekly podcast, The Seen and the Unseen, I take a shot at answering all these questions and many more. I aim to go beyond the seen and show you the unseen effects of public policy and private action. I speak to experts on economics, political philosophy, cognitive neuroscience, and constitutional law so that the insights can blow not only my mind, but also yours. The Seen and the Unseen releases every Monday. So do check out the archives and follow the show at seenunseen.in. You can also subscribe to The Seen and the Unseen on whatever podcast app you happen to prefer.